Okay, we're just about ready to fire this thing up, and it's all hands on deck. Actually, it's just me and my cat. And Marlene, the cat, really wanted to help out and just started chewing on some wires. But it's fine, there's lots of wires in this thing. That's not a problem. Let's see if we can get this thing running. Here we go. Loose ends that need to be taken care of. Put the radiator back on. We want good headlights so we can see far. So I got my bumper here, and we got our nice brackets from CP Performance. I knew I was holding on to this bus for something. First things first, we're going to put the chassis loom in and then start incorporating all of these harnesses. So there was a lot of discussion about the airbags on here. I completely agree, we do need airbags. All right, so wiring can seem very, very overwhelming, but it's easiest to just separate them into sections and then focus on just getting that one section done rather than letting the whole project overwhelm you. And it's the same with building the entire truck. If you see that giant mountain that you have to climb, it gets very, very daunting. So what I've done in the previous video, like you guys saw, is just get the lights and the HVAC working and the key working so that we can go on to the next system. Next system is the transmission. I've already got the wiring harness cleaned up because that is stock for the transmission itself. And this is the wiring harness that plugs into what we've already done through a bulkhead. So now we've got just 2 fuses to turn it on, yellow for key, red for battery, and then a relay to turn on the computer itself. This is the harness that goes to the transmission itself. So it's got its readings and then it goes to a data link so that we can tell it to do a relearn because now it's a 5-speed with overdrive if there's any diagnostic codes. So we've got an Eaton scanner to be able to do that. I need to read up on that and make sure that I understand how the scanner works and what's going on. And then we had 3 wires that didn't go anywhere that I left just in case. We can, if we need a schematic with the wiring on it, there's a number on each wire so we can figure that out later. I've removed all the wiring from the dash of the school bus. So this plug went to the gauge cluster and all the buttons. Although there was a pile of relays to turn on all of the lights and the flashers and heaters and stuff inside the bus. We don't need any of that. So being positive, I still labeled it in case I have to come back to it. I don't throw it away, put it off to the side and get it out of my head so I can clear that space for something else. What that is the plug to go from the engine to the transmission and the gauge cluster. So that's this harness right here, nice and neat. We've got the stock wiring that comes out of the CAT computer and then just the plug that talks to the transmission. So the transmission needs to know what where your throttle pedal is and how fast the engine is turning, and it'll tell the transmission, okay, tell me what to do. So hold the shift now, shift later, all that fun stuff. All of these wires are the diagnostic wires for the engine itself. So these wires tell this plug, your coolant is low, your coolant's too hot, your oil pressure is too low, all sorts of those fun things, wait to start. So we're not gonna get rid of any of these wires, and I need to get a proper pinout yet to see what exactly each one of these wires is. That plug goes to this plug, which will be inside the cab. So this will be the bulkhead. We're gonna get rid of this bulkhead and do a nice neat one with Deutsch connectors. And all we really need from that is our key power and our grounds, which we hooked up to already fire the engine up so we know it runs, and the throttle and the cruise control. So this is my cruise control. It's very simple. Basically, it's just on, off, and set. There is no speed up and slow down. There is a RPM control. So that for like a fast idle, if we had to, if we put a PTO on it and turned it into a dump truck, maybe that's helpful later. We don't need any of that. So I'll probably hide these inside the console or something and have them working, but not really visible. There's a couple wires here that went to relays to turn certain things on and off, so I just labeled them. Some were normally open and some were normally closed. So I just labeled them, and once I find my pinout, I'll know which wires are for what. But basically we're giving our own relay to the CAT computer and the ignition and the starter. So I imagine that's what some of these wires were for. There is wires coming out of the CAT for the AC. We have to leave those there in case we run into AC issues later, but I think we can make the AC work off of the forward wiring off of the 5.4. So we've got our wiring harness for the side of the truck. So that I'm gonna run in the frame so that I know exactly where it goes without looming it, and then add all my wires for the transmission fan and the FASS and the sensors for my air pressure in the tanks and that from the compressor. So we'll lay that out nice and neat. We'll add the wires in the loom while it's in the truck, clean it up. We're gonna add a couple extra wires just in case, and then loom it up nice and neat and tie it down securely for the last time. This wiring harness is a little bit shorter than what we need because we went from a regular cab long box to a crew cab long box. So what I'll probably do is make a new harness for the taillights, use some nice Deutsch connectors, and just make that harness a little bit longer for the taillights, turn, and backup lights. Other than that, we can get into it. So I hope that makes sense. Separate it, take your time, take pictures with your phone, take video, stay calm, try to get sleep, do it, and start writing out your wiring diagram. Start writing down, I need power for the fan, I need the power for this, and then start labeling the wires so you know which wire does what. So first things first, we're going to put the chassis loom in and then start incorporating all of these harnesses. Here we go. Okay, so we've got our harness for our tail lights and our fuel pump here. Now there's a couple extra wires in this harness for the ABS, the evap canister, and the just the ABS. So rather than cutting them out, the ABS takes a pretty heavy positive wire and a couple grounds. So we can use some of those wires for like the FASS and that. And we can use the extra wires to run our power ground for our sensors, for our air tank, and also for our secondary fuel pump. So all we're doing is pumping the fuel from this tank into that tank once that tank is empty. So it's much easier that way than finding a valve that switches or whatever. Just flick the switch, you gotta hold it to pump the fuel over, and it'll be done in no time. Okay, so before I run that wire, I gotta make sure that I've got power to those two for my FASS. So I went ahead and did a bunch of work here. I made mounts for my battery holders that miss my hinge. This just clears as it comes down, so we're all good. I've got a ground from here to the fender, and then this ground will go down to the starter. The starter has a ground. My positive will go down to the positive terminal on the starter there. This positive loops nicely around the back and connects to this battery here, right here. This positive will feed the fuse box and my alternator wire, and then this negative goes down to the frame, and then from the frame to the block. The ground that goes to the starter will go to the starter and then the frame, and then the cab is also grounded on a cab mount bracket from the frame to the cab mount underneath. That should give us plenty of grounds. I added a couple grounds just because that's the way I am. Now, to make everything look nice and neat, I used the one-piece sheathing from WireCare, which has a split in it and allows it to feed in once you've got your plugs and that on the end. But for the battery cables, they've got this stuff that's in a roll and is one piece with no seam. So we'll slide that over top of the positive battery cable yet. We'll put that end down, and then we'll tech clamp that down to where I want it to be, nice and neat. And then one more step done. And this fuse panel will get bolted to this battery terminal here. So starting to look nice and neat. Yeah, one last time. I did use GM battery trays because they're steel and I can weld them. So I made brackets that go into the fenders to support it all nicely. And it sits on top of the wheel well with a rubber. That being said, that took over a day. Anyway, here we go. I find the only way to cut this stuff is with tin snips, because it is really good stuff. Let's run a little tape over the end. I'm gonna put some heat shrink all the way around. Crimp on the end. It's funny, the simple things in life, but a 4-aught cable that's properly covered and tied down puts a big giant smile on your face. Funny. Thank you, Wire K. I feel like each build is getting a little nicer than the one before it, which is kind of really cool, because I'm proud of every build so far. But this one is this one's getting up there. Okay, so we got our alternator, and this was the wiring harness for that. I broke the tag, I didn't feel like taking it off of the puny, pathetic little 5.4 alternator. Look at the size of that thing. That thing ran a whole bunch of lights and warnings, and look at the girth. That's a man's alternator. So we're also upgrading the wiring a little bit to a little bit heavier gauge, 2 gauge, instead of, I don't know what this is. So we're just gonna take this harness apart and rebuild it, because this is the AC high sensor, or low sensor. I don't know, it plugs in one of the AC lines. That is my air compressor lines. And it just plugs into, there's your alternator field and armature windings. And then that is the plug to connect it into the main harness. So I'll run it into the main harness. There's a great plug right there. You can see it. So we'll clean it up and we'll attach to that one and make it look pretty. There we go. Okay, so the FASS comes with a relay to turn it on, but what we're doing is connecting it to the ABS and then relabeling the fuse panel. That way it'll be fused and protected and heavy enough to run the FASS. I'm gonna slide this down into the harness, not lose my sockets behind my nice headlights, and tie it into the harness, and it'll loom everything together once we add all the necessary wires that we need. There we go. Okay, so while I'm working on the wiring, I can do that tonight. There's lots of little stuff to do. There's still a couple things I gotta do while other stores are open. They close at 5, and then I'm stuck for the weekend. So I had this, I gotta do the one return line yet from the FASS. So that actually takes the aerated fuel and puts it back in the tank. And we don't wanna aerate it by just splashing it in there, so I made this little fitting. This was just an adapter to go from pipe to JIC. And it was close to fit that plastic pipe in there, so I drilled that out, shoved the plastic pipe in there, put a screw in there so it doesn't fall out, and then machined this with a couple lips on there to sit in that rubber. So now the fuel, you don't want it to splash on the top, you want it to go down to the bottom, but you don't want it on 90, because then the tank starts swirling. So quick little fitting on the lathe, threw that on there. Now I can run to VNR and grab my hoses. I need the hose from there to there. That's the last one, I believe. And then also my fitting on this little guy here, because we blew that out. So see if I can get a copper one or a better one, and then we'll go from there. Here we go. Okay, so I've traced wires out of the fuse box that are relays that are gonna run things that I need to get run. So now I'm doing the pass-through for the transmission controller. And I found a spot that would work good for me down below. So I just took the drill and drilled through where I thought was a good spot, and through the wheel well. I got lucky and it's a perfect spot. So now I know that I can drill just beside that in a nice flat spot, and then do the pass through that. And then I can disconnect it if I ever have to pull the cab off. We got another one of these plugs, and that will go on the driver's side, and all my sensor wires for the gauges, temperature, fuel pressure, air pressure, all that stuff is going to run to the Holley dash through that firewall connector, through that bulkhead. So that'll keep everything nice and clean. So just disconnect fuse panel. It'll look factory. For the transmission harness, it's a nice short one, nice and compact. We got the controller there for it. A lot of questions, how am I controlling the Allison? That was the whole point. The Allison came with the Caterpillar, and it is its own standalone. All we have to do this one is to do a relearn on it, because now it's a 5-speed instead of a 4-speed. What I am gonna do is take this loom off and inspect all the wires, make sure that they're in good shape, and then cover it up with some really nice loom from Wire Care. So here we go. Okay, transmission controller's mounted. We got it bolted down here. I gotta tighten those 2 bolts yet, but I'm gonna put a Velcro strip on top where it sits against the heating duct. And that'll be perfect for keeping it moving, not moving. We got the fuses and the relay mounted right where it's easy to get at. This panel just pops out. And we got all the wiring ran nice and neat underneath where you can barely see it. A quick little tip, this is the size of the hole for the plug to go through the firewall, but we've got quite a bit of insulation in here. So I drill the hole and then I do a bigger size just to cut through the insulation, then go to the right size. That allows the plug to go right up to the firewall and let you spin the nut on really easy, because there's not really enough threads to go through 1/2 inch of insulation. So we got insulation on the inside and on the outside. So yeah, quick little tip. Otherwise you fight with that plastic plug for a while. I need to get it power and ground. So here I've got this plug deadheaded. It's got a plug in it, but it's got power and ground all the time. So that'll be my main one. And then this one for my seatbelt restraint module. Like it explodes to lock your seatbelt instantly, or I don't know, something. We don't need that. And it's got key power. So we'll run those wires. We'll take those wires out of the loom nice and neat. We've got the plug mounted underneath here, so that's good and solid, and that is on the other side of my shield. And then we've got the ground to the frame there, which is just a foot away from the main battery ground. And now that I'm here, I realize that if you see that hole that's supposed to hold in my thermostat, it's a different, or my block heater. I went with a different kind of block heater, and that hole is open to the cooling passages. So we would have had coolant all over the floor if I didn't pull this cover off and do that little repair. Now I can do that repair. A little bit of thread sealant, lock that good and tight, and one more thing done. Here we go. All right, so finishing up the cooler, I ended up drilling 2 holes and then tapping this for my 2 sensors rather than putting them in line. One of these last little finishing things. So Vince is gonna weld her up. He's back, he never left. It's just, we've been busy. Anyway, we'll weld that up, and then I got a really old corroded yucky pipe that he's also gonna weld on the intake. This will go really good and the pipe will go really bad. There we go. Apparently the welder didn't like the Chinese aluminum.
Yeah, I like this one.
Yeah? That was from being our scrap pile.
Yeah.
That we paid brand new for.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much recycling going on now. Even when we drill some stuff at work,
yeah,
we'll be drilling, and just crunch, smash, drill bit, look down in there, just something, yeah. It's just not clean straight through.
But this one will be much better. This is good aluminum that's like 40 years old.
Yeah.
So it'll be fine. Okay, so it didn't weld very nice because the cooler wasn't that nice. This aluminum was really easy to weld, but I sent this out to get pressure checked, make sure that my fittings seal on the copper washers and that it doesn't leak, and also to flush it and clean it, make sure that there's nothing left in here that's going to wreck my transmission. So thanks to Jay Summers Service Center in town there. They flushed it for me. I'm gonna splash a little bit of paint on that, and then we can install that again, and then that will be tightened up for the last time. Then we can actually fire it up with no issues. Exciting stuff. Soon boys, real soon. Oh, and before I forget, that's just temperature sensor. Let us know what it is through the Holley Dash, and that will turn on the fan. So that's just the ground. When it hits a certain temperature, it'll ground out the relay and then turn the fan on. Okay, so for my connectors, we got all these nice Deutsch connectors from WireCare, and these are awesome because they come in all sorts of different configurations: 6, 8, 2, 4, 12. We got a big round one with 32 of them. But the beauty part is that all the pins for the different size wires all go into the same plug, and when you pop them in there, they just click in to the spot, and you can just use a screwdriver to open a flap and pull the pins out in case you mess up. So originally I've got 2 sensors on this fan, one for my temperature gauge inside the cab, one to turn on the fan, and then 2 for the fan. So originally I was going to use a 4 plug. I'm like, oh, why don't we just use a 6 plug and pop them all in. So if you mess up, you can just pull the pins out, pop them into a 6 plug. On top of that, I don't know what will work better if I suck or blow with this fan. So if I need to change the direction, or I find it's not working properly, or whatever, I think I can pull enough air through the side here and pull it down. That way I'm pushing all the debris out of the fan, or out of the radiator and onto the ground, rather than sucking up all the moisture and water and stuff like that. So if I hook these up backwards, then all I do is unpin it from the plug and switch the 2 plugs around, and bam, done. So I know this fan does suck and blow, so we're good to go that way. So I'm gonna just quickly pop the plug on there and then run the wires in my harness nicely right along the frame. I'm gonna turn, so 2 of these are just grounds that are gonna go straight to the frame here, but then the plug, they'll still come out of the plug. And then that's really nice. I can pull my harness or whatever I need to do type of thing. So yeah, having the right tools and the right parts to make it look neat is so much better. So take a good look. A bunch of wires hanging down. There's some wires, and then we'll show you the finished product. Here we go. Okay, so we got the wiring going to the transmission fan. I did have to run an extra relay because I need most of these relays, which is very unfortunate. But I do have it triggered off of a fuse that I'm not using, so it's nice and neat wiring. Comes out of here nice and goes into there. We'll cover that up nicely. So what we're gonna do now is to go on to the Holley Dash. And we got a Pro Dash, and it's a universal fit for like a standalone unit. So you can use these for gas, diesels, everything. And they come with all the wires already pre-made. So we got oil, temperature, mat, one for pressure. The issue is that these wires are way too long. It's not gonna be neat enough for me, and I want a bulkhead so that we can unplug it for 1, and 2 to keep the noise out. So the advantage of that is if I measure roughly where the sensor goes to the bulkhead, I can cut the wire there and then put my Deutsch bulkhead in the middle, trim the length to whatever I need, making sure that I have enough wire left to go up to the dash. It should turn out really, really nice. The issue is they split all the 5 volt and the ground right at the plug, and it makes sense for them, but I'll have to do that on the outside of the bulkhead in the engine compartment, so then I don't have to use extra pins, because we have a pile of sensors going into this thing. So then I'm gonna run the engine harness from the cat through that same bulkhead, so we'll run it all nice and neat into it, so the engine harness will be on its own bulkhead rather than coming out of the PCM on the firewall. So I clean it up really, really nice. We only need a few things from the cat, so the throttle pedal, the RPM sensor to come into the dash, and then cruise control options, and that should be it. So I'm gonna start cutting the harness. Basically, I'm going to, I already cut one, and then I messed up, so I have to replace 1 pin, this green wire here. But that's easy enough. It comes with the universal pins too. You just pop the pin out and go. But I'm just gonna cut the harness where it fits nice and neat on the firewall, going up to my dash, and then we can trim these wires accordingly as we run them through the engine bay, because these will all be the same length. These will all be different because the sensors are all over the place. We already put all the sensors in. So we got fuel pressure, air pressure tank for the back. We've got air pressure sensor for the front airbags, air pressure sensor for the back airbags, coolant, fuel pressure, oil pressure, and probably 2 or 3 more. Yeah, we're not gonna film this because it's a lot of tedious stuff. But if you want to know how to set up the dash, we've set up a whole custom dash for the Mustang and the Cat, or you'll have to go see it in person. Anyway, I gotta get to work and I gotta stop. I gotta start thinking and I gotta concentrate, locking the doors and going to work. Here we go. Okay, so there's the plug that goes into the Holley dash, goes to the bulkhead in the firewall, and then to the engine harness right there. I tied the harness together where it would join out and then split out. So we've got our coolant, fuel pressure, oil pressure, and temperature. And then our common grounds for the sensors and common for the 5 volts. I wrote everything down so that we've got the Holley dash, the pinouts. You gotta go online and see which pins are specific to what, 5 volt analog or temperature or RPM, whatever. And then I wrote down the Deutsch. I tried to correspond the pins on the Holley dash to the pins on the Deutsch pad. And then took my ohm meter and just double checked that the pin is correct on here, meets the sensors that are over there. So we're gonna need this Holley schematic when we assign the pins to the specific gauges that we've thrown on the dash. This is the plug that goes into the Cat computer, and I'm gonna run the throttle pedal through that same bulkhead, and then the RPM gauge, which is just a square wave going out. So I should just need one of these wires. I'm not sure which one. One is ground all the time, one is the voltage that the sensor makes. So that might be trial and error. I gotta try and get a pinout for this one. I'll go bug my buddy Josh, I guess. All the other wires, this is the bulkhead that goes through. I'll line it up with that one, get rid of that bulkhead and shorten the wires to where I need it. If I'm losing anybody, just enjoy it. The frustration in my voice or the excitement, however you want to look at it. So we're gonna tie this in. And then really the only one that has to be perfect is the throttle pedal. And that's pretty straightforward. That's this one right here. It just plugs into those 3 wires. We'll just disconnect it. We'll mount the throttle pedal. Thinking out loud, I'm gonna keep going, but that's where I'm at. Here we go. Okay, there it is. All thinned out and super simple. So we'll start, where should we start? We'll start at the plug on the computer. These are, this is the wire that goes to the transmission. So the transmission and the engine talk to each other, say where your throttle is, what the RPM is. We've got our 2 grounds and our 2 positives that get spliced over there, and then our ignition. So these will get tied to something under the hood, so we don't have to go through the firewall for that. These wires are all the extra wires. I didn't cut them just yet, but I don't need them. So that's gonna be my engine light, my low warning, my wait to start light, all that fun stuff. I did get a hold of Josh. He's gonna send me the pinout tomorrow, and then that's it. I need some plugs like this. I'll try to find some somewhere because there's a bunch of wires that I don't need, like my speed off of the back of the transmission, because we have GPS with the Holley, so I can take these out and get rid of them. From there, we go to the just enough room for the bulkhead. This is still under the hood. These are my engine sensors for the Holley. So my coolant, my fuel pressure, and my oil pressure. That will monitor the engine. From there, I just need to tie my grounds and my 5 volts together, but I need to add more wires that are gonna run along the frame for my other sensors. This is everything to do with my cruise control, and I didn't shorten it because I want to make sure that it works first. There was 3 wires there that I cut that were on a relay, and I'm not sure why we need to have a relay to turn the cruise on, because that's all 5 volt stuff that's going on inside here. So we're gonna make sure that that works first, and then I will shorten that and hook it up to the steering wheel controls if I can. I'll diagnose, make sure that I can do that, otherwise I'll just pop those somewhere so we still have cruise. From here, this is the diagnostic port that goes to this. This one plugs into the transmission, and that will give me my transmission readings, and this will give me my engine readings, so we can still hook up a scan tool to it. I got to hook power and ground up to them as well. Nothing to worry about. From there, these are the wires that go to my Holley Dash. So we've got our sensors coming in. Basically, they're coming through here. These sensors are coming through, and that will display on my dash all my readings, and then the extra wires, my red and black for my power to the Holley Dash, and my white for ignition. And then I don't know what the blue, gray, and green wires are for, but I'll look that up and go from there. I didn't loom anything because we're gonna start adding more wires to it. But from here, I can power everything up. We're gonna put everything inside the truck. We're gonna power it up, power up the dash, make sure that all my sensors are reading. I wanna be able to see my RPM and my oil pressure right away, my fuel pressure right away. That way I know where to start. And this is the plug that I shortened for my throttle pedal. My throttle pedal's right here, so the bulkhead goes right underneath the steering wheel. I shortened this. They were already using the Deutsch connectors back in 2000, so that is under the firewall there. I'll plug it in tomorrow, but I gotta mount the throttle pedal. Super easy, make a quick little bracket, and then that's it. So if we were to pull the cab, all I'd have to do is disconnect this one, and we could lift the cab. Everything from the engine stays in the engine bay. Everything in the cabin stays in the cabin. Super easy. That took a while, but it was actually a lot of fun. I do recommend really good lighting when you're doing this. But these Deutsch connectors are so awesome. Definitely check out WireCare, everything they've got to offer. These are fantastic. You just push them in, pop them on, and you're done. So super easy from here. Yeah, it's getting pretty late, so I might call it for tonight because I don't want to do anything stupid. And then we'll go from there. Here we go. For these Deutsch connectors, they're so awesome. Strip your wire, twist it, pop it in the holder or in the crimper. It puts it to the right depth. Shove your wire in, crimp it, it squeezes it from 4 sides, give it a little tug test, and pop it in your holder. It's already sealed. If you mess up, click it to a different spot. Man, makes everything so much quicker and easier. Where have you been all my life? Bam, put on your wedge. I think it's this one. Done. We'll do the other end, lengthen the wires, and we're golden. So nice. So my faith in Ford is restored a little bit. Still using the same plugs for the taillight, so I could plug this 93 harness into the 2008 harness if they switched the male and the female around. So it was 2 males, and then doesn't work. So we ended up putting a Deutsch connector in there anyway. This one, because my harness isn't long enough to reach for the trailer plug, I'm gonna put this one in the bed because it's obviously gonna have a 5th wheel at some point. So we'll tee into there and then run the harness down underneath there. So I've got shielded cable with the trailer wiring left over, so we'll just use that. It'll be nice and shielded. And then the back half of the truck is done. Fuel gauges for both front tanks and power to that tank to pump that tank into this one. And then the wiring's done at the back. The box can go back on. I had no brake lights, and that ended up being the sensor, that stupid steel sensor on the pedal. And that's why this wasn't unlocking. I didn't have my brake lights hooked up, so I couldn't tell. So yeah, I do know that you need to step on the pedal to get it to shift. It's I have been around for the last 10 years. But what's cool is that the sensor off of the 93 fit the pedal, and I've got working brake lights. So that's exciting. I need to tee the transmission into it. It needs to know for the brake sensor as well. So I'm still gonna have to put one more wire on there. once I figure out which wire that is, because that will turn the cruise off. Got the headlights figured out, so that's all there. We got high beam, low beam, we've got turn, and they're all good. The horn works, so we're gonna clean up this wiring underneath it yet. I gotta do the grid heater, wire that in on the sensor, and I found that kicking around. So once that'll power up, then we're good there. So we're moving on. Here we go. There's Brad is back. 10 o'clock on a Sunday night.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
We're finally linking up to the Ford ECU.
Nice.
PCM.
I think it, yeah, who knows?
Whatever they want to call it, the engine computer.
Yep.
We're downloading the file and then we'll remove the PATs.
Nice. So that'll get rid of the nice flashing light. I think the blue light in the PATs is flashing in unison there. So yeah, I just need that gone. The only thing that's not working is my trailer plug. I got nothing on my trailer plug, so I don't know what's going on there. All the fuses and relays are okay. We're not planning on pulling anything to Bowling Green, so that's fine, but maybe that has something to do with it. But it was actually the reason that this wasn't coming out was my brake switch was gone.
All right, so we're in here to disable the PATs. As easy as a click, we do that. The air conditioner, you don't want that to disable at all. So we're gonna set the disable time at wide open throttle to 0%, but it's not gonna see throttle delivery anyway.
Yeah.
And then we go to the speedo. We've got some speed limiters in here, limited by the vehicle speed sensor. Just to avoid any problems that may come up, we'll max those out.
Nice. Yeah, it's all as soon as that's unplugged, then I think everything still works without the dash plugged in. So what I'm gonna do is just tee into the power and the key switch just to run my Holley dash. So then when I have to flash or do anything, I need to have the gauges plugged back in again for the CAN bus to be complete.
Yep.
So then we can just unplug the Holley and then plug that dash back in again, and it should light up.
Okay.
And then we can do this.
And
right?
the Holley is your speedometer?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's just GPS.
Fantastic.
So, yeah. So that's all done. So beauty.
All right. I think that's going to be her, and we'll just save that. Call that PATs disable.
Yeah, so I thought there was more safeties. That's one thing we didn't know. When the GMs, I think when it sees like low battery voltage, it'll just knock out your AC because it wants you to get home and doesn't want you to waste energy or battery life on that. Also, if you're wide open throttle, if there's a couple different things that knock the AC out. So we wanted to go in and just take care of that. So that we've got AC all the time, regardless of what's happening. So I think we got it. I don't think there's really anything else to do other than a little bit more wiring. The O-rings are coming for this thing tomorrow, so then we can actually fire it up. Sweetness. All right, I think that's it for tonight. See you tomorrow. I think we'll fire it up and set up the Holley dash, do a bunch of stuff, make sure that the sensors are all working. We got oil pressure and fuel pressure, nothing's leaking, and then we'll crank her over. Okay, so funny thing, this is the EGT from Holley, and my cat got locked in the shop, or I don't know, she was in the shop or bored, or I don't know. Anyway, she chewed the end of the wire, but I thought it's not a big deal because there's only 3 wires poking out. So then I'm walking around and it's like perfect, she didn't wreck the sensor, just my wire's 3 inches shorter and that's it. So I cut the wire and I tossed it, then I open it up and it's Cat 5 and I'm like, holy crap, there's 8 wires or more, 3, so yeah, 8. I'm like, now which wires do I use? And I'm like, the only way I can really find out is if I find this piece again. And so Aaron came in, I'm like, I can't get the EGT working because I don't want to hook it up backwards and break it. And I sit down, have my coffee, and there it is, right beside the seat. Because the shop is super organized and I know exactly where everything is. Like, it's super, super organized. So I don't know why they use Cat 5, but they only use the orange, black, and white like all the others. so we can hook them up. I ran the wire in there. We're going to just install the last of the sensors. So that's the EGT, the boost, the air sensors on the back, and that's it. There was a lot of discussion about the airbags on here. When we bought it, Jose said, it's got no airbags, we die like men. And a lot of guys were like, you need airbags. And you're right, I completely agree. We do need airbags. Airbags and seatbelts. And so what we're gonna do is, the switch here where it says airbags, we're gonna put these nice toggle switches here, and that'll control the bags in the front and the back. So if we want the front to go up or more air in the airbags, we just hit that. And if we want to dump some air in the airbags, we just take it out. And then we'll have another switch right here for the rear bags. So thank you for your input. You sleep well at night knowing that my truck has 4 airbags. I mounted my valves for my airbags. So what we've got is air coming into here, tees in, goes into here, and basically it fills the bags front and back. And then if I want to drop a little bit of pressure, we exhaust some of that before the valve. So these valves should be closed. And then it opens when it goes. So all those wires are ran to the front. We got sensors on the back and on the front. So on the dash, it'll tell us what our air tank pressure is and what the pressure in the bags are. I removed the sensor for the air tank out of that. I moved it to the front here so that all of them would be nice and neat, and I had to unravel all that again because I had to add all the wires for the Holley stuff. So I didn't shield them up yet, but man, that looks so nice. And then these are the wires. I just got to pin them into the plug. But before we do that, we just check and make sure that everything's working. So these are the solenoids at the back, and you can hear them clicking. So they're all working. So those would end up on toggle switches on this little guy, the cover right here. So just 2 toggle switches, more air, less air. So we'll run those in, and then I got to run a couple ignition wires in here yet, and we got power. I think we're just about there. I did goof. I didn't put my boost sensor, which is another pressure sensor, on the manifold. Remember, Vince welded an extra tab on here, and I've got the cat air pressure one on there. I don't know why I didn't put the Holley one on there. So I had to take the manifold off again last night and drill and tap that. I could have put it on my intake pipe, but it was cleaner on the manifold and it's tucked underneath so you don't see it. We got EGTs from Holley, so that's gonna be mounted right here. I just gotta run, I did weld the bung in on the exhaust. I generally like to go in the manifold before the turbo, but this one was a weld-in bung. I can't really weld the cast very well, so I welded it into the elbow on the right behind where it matches the turbo. I got the wipers working. I did goof there. It was late last night, and I stuck my hand in here to put the linkage on, and you can see I got stuck, which was really, really dumb. You do dumb stuff when you start getting tired. I didn't even have my cell phone on me, so what happened was this arm was digging into my arm, so I could get my arm in, I couldn't get it back out. So I was standing on my log, and I couldn't reach any tools, couldn't do anything. And you gotta slow down, because if you panic, this could slice your arm open. If you fall, you break your arm. So that was kind of dumb, but learn from my mistakes. Also, be careful of hoods closing on fingers and stuff. So make sure your hinges are good, or lock them, or repair vice grips or whatever. Just some safety stuff, because a little dicey. I had to stop, take a breather. I'm like, okay, nothing bad's happening. My hand's stuck in there. My wife was gone. Like, I can't yell. Nobody can hear me. It's not good. So I just have to take a breather and don't do anything stupid. And then you learn to smarten up. All right, so what we're doing is matching all of our sensors to our Holley standalone Pro Dash. Aaron made the gauges that we've drawn on the screen, and we can work together. I wrote down what pin does what. You can buy this off of our website, actually. We love these dashes because they're so universal. Speedometer is just GPS, and everything else we can program into it as we feel. So on this dash alone, we have boost, RPM, front and rear fuel tank, oil pressure, fuel pressure, air pressure in the tanks, battery, speedometer, odometer, airbag pressures for the front and the back, engine temperature and transmission temperature, and something else if we feel like it. But what we're doing is doing this on the front of the truck before we install it in the truck itself. That way we can trace wires if we have an issue, and we can follow pin numbers and that easy before we put the bulkhead into the truck. Here we go. Okay, so this wiring is all nice and neat and organized, and I'm super happy with how everything's going. Fuse panel is done and rewired so that the fuses for the ESOF, the heated mirrors, the ABS, those relays are now running, the engine, the transmission, and the FASS, and those are staying on. They're being triggered by fuses that are live during ignition and during cranking. Otherwise, if it doesn't start, it's because sometimes the key takes the power from everything and focuses all the battery to the starter. So those fuses are okay. We got a couple extra ignition wires to run some accessories and stuff inside the cab. I have one pin free on my plug, and that one I might save for my wait to start. And that's it. But for now, we're gonna plug it in, loom everything up, and tuck everything away in the engine bay, and that'll be the last time. Now, the point of wiring is to make it look like you didn't do anything. That's a good wiring job. Well, and everything has to work. So kind of like a body man, not really appreciated much, but the point is to make it look like you did nothing at all. Anyway, here we go. Okay, so I did some stuff while camera was off. Got a lot done, but a couple problems. One, the power steering pump was leaking, so that's not the end of the world. I can take the power steering pump off of my Cummins because I have a compressor on that as well, and pop that on there. I tried to seal it up, that didn't work. We have a bigger issue, and that issue is, hey kitty, the fuel lines that I grabbed from Grassroots, which were supposed to be good for diesel, definitely are not. I turned the FASS on and it is pouring out of everywhere. Like it's just a steady stream of fuel coming out. So the diesel chewed that, and that's a big deal because we can't have that going through. That's my filter. So we can't do anything. I gotta pull all those fuel lines off that are all tucked in there real nice and replace them, and that gets expensive and not fun. So a bunch of them for VNR are fine, but it's the main lines that I ran, and then I have really nice fittings and every nice T's and stuff there, so kind of want to hear it run, but I can't even hear it run. So that's really disappointing. I gotta talk to those boys from Grassroots. Do not use those fuel lines on diesel. All right, I'm going to bed. It is very late, and that is it. I'm gonna prep the Bronco, and unfortunately, I will have to get at this when I come back. Crap, crap, crap. Here we go. Okay, so the dream was to have this ready for Ford Fest, and I gave myself lots of time, but the wiring to try and get the dash to work set me back about a week and a bit. I tore apart the first harness, I tried doing a bunch of stuff that didn't work, and finally found a truck to get it going again, but that set me back a little bit. We were gonna drive it to Ford Fest. There's no option to tow it because it's really heavy and long, so we need a 20-foot trailer and a really big truck, and then insurances and licenses and stuff get kind of sketchy, so the only option was to drive it. We were hoping to drive it if everything worked right the first time. With a few little bugs here and there, we were gonna make the attempt, but the power steering pump leaked and then the fuel lines leaked. On top of that, we couldn't get an appraisal done in time because it's not complete together for insurance purposes. So if something were to happen on our road trip, we would get a check from insurance for $4,000 maybe. And that is definitely not worth the risk. So the grown-ups in Aaron and me said, we're gonna call it, and rather than rush it and make mistakes, because I'm super tired, I worked really long and hard this last 2 weeks, steady, trying to get it ready in time. But then your brain stops functioning properly. Even stupid things like just trying to put a nut on a bolt and your fingers don't work right. You drop the nut 6 times, and it's not as much fun as it was if you take your time. So I'm really happy with the progress. Everything that I've done so far, I don't have to do again. In the fact that like it's SEMA ready, and okay, it's back from SEMA now, we can take it all apart and do it right. I would have liked to hear it run in this video, but those fuel lines, I tucked them away and hugged the engine and a whole bunch of tech clamps. So we're gonna have to redo those. Now FASS does give you fuel line with it. it's just big and blue, and there's nothing else blue on the truck, so I didn't want to use it. So we're gonna go to airline fittings. Those are Teflon on the inside. And I ran them in the Silverado. The transport truck, the Kenworth, had the airlines from new, so we know that those work. So for now, we are gonna take the Bronco. There's a few things I gotta do to it, just to button that up, make sure that that can make it. Things like I never actually got the radio working before. So we're gonna get some tunes going, add an oil pressure gauge because that engine is getting really, really tired. But we'll see you guys at Ford Fest. Thank you guys for watching. I really wanted to have the truck running in this video, but that's the way projects go. So thanks for watching, guys. Remember, if you're not filthy, you're not rich, get out there and work on it. I am so happy with this thing. I cannot wait. I almost don't want to go to Ford Fest and keep working on it, but we're gonna go for a nice little cruise and see some of you guys, hopefully. Here we go.